Welcome to another Inspirational People interview on the Share Life podcast. Today, I'm here with Dustin Devries. Did I get that right? Devries?
Yes, that's right. You got
Dustin, say hello. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Dustin is the owner of an Austin-based app development company. It's called Caffeine Interactive. Caffeine Interactive. So we definitely need to talk about what your caffeine sources are over there. He's a specialist in software strategy and architecture and a family man who enjoys gardening, cooking, fishing, and guitar playing. He believes that a work-life balance is essential to operate a business, overcome adversities, and find a bigger purpose in life. So Dustin, getting the Justins and the Dustins mixed up. Dustin, welcome. Tell us about you and your story and how you got to be a business owner and how that journey's been and how that brings you to today and how cooking ties into all of that as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, first, thanks for having me. So my story, I started off, graduated from college. I went off, got a job in the semiconductor industry for about 10 years. Started to learn that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to have more freedom in my life than maybe provided with a 9-to-5 corporate job. So a lot of stress related to that. So I started doing some freelance work. I'd always been, even when I was working in the corporate world, doing software development. So just kind of broadened that, started building more websites, web apps, that sort of thing. Kind of hit critical mass, and this was 2010, I guess, when I left the corporate world. Okay. 2013 kind of hit critical mass where it's like, okay, well, I've got more work that I can handle. You need to start telling people no, raise my rates, or I can start building a team. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Here we are.
Now that's the difference between you and I. So I used to own a marketing agency. It's called Noodlehead Marketing. And I went down that road, and now I'm an independent contractor, freelancer, consultant, however you want to label me. But I'm doing the opposite, which is I don't want to build a team right now. So it's funny because, we all go down different paths and it leads to.
You might have made the right decision. To be quite honest.
It's hard. We'll see. It is hard. I think there are a lot of benefits to having a team that I do miss. And there's the income dependency that sort of comes with the labor as an individual, and it's pros and cons. It's just, I think for me, I found it to be a distraction from the purpose, kind of like you were mentioned in your statement. So tell us how that's unfolded and why you called it Caffeine Interactive, and whether or not you have Mountain Dew stored in the refrigerator or not.
No, pretty much just iced tea and coffee. Those are my and an occasional Diet Dr. Pepper for any. Well, you can't see it because my green screen. But occasional Diet Dr. Pepper. But just really where it came from was when I was still freelancing. My wife was involved in another startup company. Her and another person started a business, and they called it Caffeine Consulting. Okay. And that business never really got off the ground. It was something she's kind of doing on the side with some of the other work she was doing. But I liked the name. So when we decided to start our business, and so I didn't mention that part of it. We are a husband and wife founded company. Okay, my background is in software development. My wife's background is in, she's a product manager. So building out requirements for applications, wireframing mockups, kind of all of that sort of stuff. She's really good at defining the problem, and then I come in and do the implementation. So pretty good 1-2 punch with a couple dynamics.
When I had the company, me and my wife worked together for the first half of it, and then we had kids, and that kind of changed her direction. So do you have children or?
Yes, we do. We have two kids, 11 and 12.
Kids. So wow. Cool. So why start a company? What was what was it like to shift from corporate America to entrepreneurship?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it has its own. You're trading one set of stresses for another, and I don't know. I think I think it's less so now, but back when I did it, the whole idea of starting a business and being an entrepreneur was very romanticized. I think it still is to a certain extent now. Yeah, but I always think of it as you really are trading one set of problems for another. I'm a firm believer that everything's kind of equals out in life, and I'm sometimes envious of the person who can go and work a 9-to-5 job in the corporate world and go and check in each day and check out, and they've got that separation. Maybe talking about work-life balance, maybe a better work-life balance than what I have now, because a lot of times work overflows into other things. That phone goes off at dinner or middle of the night, something breaks.
There's something about entrepreneurship, whether it's freelancing or being a business owner where the structures that maybe a corporate company offers, they don't exist. So you have to create and enforce them yourself.
Yeah.
A good example, like you said, is time boundaries. Retirement investment is another one. Like as a freelancer, no one's going to tell you to invest for your future or as an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I think there's a lot more involved, but I like, setting my own schedule. I think the thing that drove me the most crazy when I was in the corporate world was just how inefficient I felt like my life was, because you wake up in the morning, you gotta get dressed, whereas now I can just jump straight out of bed and get on my computer if I want to, right? I gotta go drive to work, commute to work, which in my case, it was about, 15, 20-minute drive to work. But, for some, it's even worse. And then when you get to work, the distractions from people stopping by your desk and just, you want to go get a cup of coffee from the break room. It takes you 45 minutes because you get caught up with somebody, whether it's a fun conversation or a work conversation. It's just, at the end of the day, I'd look and be like, man, I feel like I only worked for like maybe 3 or 4 hours. That may even be generous because of all the other interruptions and meetings and everything else. So now being the boss, I can, decide when I want to blow off meetings. I can decide when we should meet and say, this doesn't really require a meeting. Let's figure this out over Slack or whatever, So there's definitely some advantages, but there's disadvantages for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced in your journey so far, or one in particular that would stand out, that kind of highlight just the journey, the story you've been on?
Oh gosh. There's definitely, I think one of the things that came up early on with our business is we were getting a lot of work, but we weren't look at the cash flow. We were having cash flow issues. And so a lot of things around like structures around the way we do projects and the payment process. And, we need to be paid or, setting up retainers and, prepayments on projects. And if we're not going to do a retainer prepayment on project, then, it affects the hourly rate, having these different triggers that we can pull to maybe reduce the cost for the customer, in exchange for reducing risk for us. And so, that was definitely a big one for us. There's been other personal things like I don't think I've shared this with you yet, but I had cancer back in 2018. So that was a big shocker, right? Going through all that, and I'm lucky to say that I made it through okay, but I had to go through chemotherapy and a lot of craziness. And so
what was it unexpected? Obviously it was unexpected, but was there like symptoms, or did it kind of the diagnostic come out of the blue, or?
Yeah, it was essentially was testicular cancer. And so it had metastasized into my abdomen region, to my retroperitoneum. And so they call it, it's the medical term for the region. But that's, it's going for walks every day and going for a run every now and then. I was just getting these weird pains after about a mile, and it just like really debilitating, right? I have to like sit down. And so started going and getting it checked out. Thought it was like GI tract related stuff, and ended up being, they found this huge mass in my body, and like, well, and I thought it was a sarcoma, so there's a lot of just fear and trauma around that. Because at one point we thought it was a sarcoma, which is like a, much, the prognosis on that is very poor compared to most testicular cancers. And so a lot of fear around that. We'd gone through, having building a family and everything else, and realizing that my time may be short-lived here. And so how do we deal with that? How do we also deal with, everything else that's going on in our lives running a business? And, fortunately, I think we were able to build up the business to a point then, and build up the right systems and hire the right people that we were able to overcome that and do well. But that was a really traumatic experience. And, that was certainly a big challenge.
Do you still, it's what, 3 years later?
Yeah.
Do you still feel like you're recovering from that season? Or
not really. I feel like I'm, from a health, like physical perspective, I feel very healthy and I feel good. So I don't see a lot of problems from that perspective. Mentally, emotionally, I think it's changed me. I think for the better. The short term was not great, but I think that's what most people experience when they go through some sort of traumatic experience. You never say like, never thank God for getting cancer, thank God for whatever kind of problems you may be having, right? But you can at least thank him for the message and what you learned from that. And that's kind of how what I took away from that, was just feeling like, I learned something from this experience, and it made me a better person. It made me, and we always, I think I've always tried to do a good job of reflecting on things and being aware of like even before I had cancer, I would think about the fact, I'd sit there and look at how old my kids were, and I'd start doing the math, figure out how soon it was before they're going to be driving, how soon it was going to be before they go off to college, and thinking, man, I've only got like 12 years left. Like, it seems like a long time, but it's really not that long. And then, you know, cancer just kind of put a whole other dynamic on, like not taking things for granted. Everyone probably says that who's gone through cancer and been fortunate enough to make it through and survive. But you know, I think that was definitely a big important focus for me.
Yeah. So what would you say is the difference between the person before the cancer and the person you are now? The Dustin, pre-cancer Dustin and post.
That's a good question. I mean, I would like to think I'm more introspective in my life and my relationships. I try to be more intentional with the things that are important to me. You know, I've taken on some new habits. Like this year, I started journaling. I've done some journaling in the past, but something I've taken up here recently to start off the new year. Using that as kind of a, what'd you call it? Like a checks and balances system to make sure that I'm staying on top of the things that are important to me. You know, I think sometimes we kind of fill things out just based on intuition and say, I haven't spent some time with my kids in the last few days. Maybe I need to go do that. But being able to like actually journal about these kind of things and have records and kind of quantify it all is helping me out. So there's some, you know, behaviors like that have changed. Trying to get my health in order. I mean, kind of suffered from that, going through that experience. And so coming out of that, you know, been trying to get more active. Like I used to be a big runner. I ran a half marathon back in like 2007 or 8, somewhere around there, 2006. I don't remember exactly. Yeah. And kind of let that slide to the point where I wasn't running at all. And just like in the last couple of months for the first time I ran, you know, got in a 3.5 mile run. And I was like, wow, this is great. It's like good old days. You know, I used to do this like every other day, you know, and I'd run it in like 25 minutes or something, you know, and now I'm like chugging along at 40 minutes plus, but you know, I've made it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm trying to turn this around and take care of myself, because I know that life is short and I want to be around for my kids. And just facing that, knowing that, you know, thinking about things like I may, you know, I'm not going to be there to walk my daughter down the aisle when she gets married, or my son gets married, he has kids, I'm not going to be there. You know, those things were really important to me. I really thought about that, thinking like, man, like if this cancer takes me, I'm not going to get to experience those things. And so now realizing I don't want to take any of that for granted. I want to do everything I can to be on this earth as long as I can and be healthy, so I can experience all these great things that the future holds. Yeah.
Do you find that, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're used to sort of taking control of your destiny in a way, but something like cancer sort of takes that steering wheel or control away, or at least the perception that we have that. So how do you sort of reconcile that with the idea of having grace for yourself, in the sense that as much as you'd like to be able to sort of overcome, there are some things of which we're subject to things that are beyond our control? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And, you know, the way I would answer that is, you know, I love the last couple of years, I've really grown to just love the Serenity Prayer. Someone asked me the other day, if you had a sheet of paper in your pocket that would have one saying on it, what would it be? And I answered the Serenity Prayer, which, you know, for listeners, you know, basically probably most know the Serenity Prayer. If not, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that ties right in with what you're saying, because there's so many things that we can control that we should try to control. And there's so many things we can't control. And, you know, I see that all the time. I see that play out with my family, not just my immediate family, but I mean, my extended family, you know, disagreements between aunts and uncles or whatever it might be, right? Different things that come up. And it's like, well, you know, some things you just can't, you know, I can't control looking at, say, other people's relationships, or I can't control well, I guess maybe to some extent I could control cancer, living a healthier life, but I don't even know where mine came from. You know, I don't know that it was because I was living a bad life or had bad habits or anything like that. Sometimes it just happens. You hear about this happening to people all the time, where a guy that's been like fit and exercise all his life, and he falls over dead from a heart attack. And it's like, it's horrible to think about, but you know, you don't have control over everything sometimes. And so just learning to roll with that. And I think what's been a big important life lesson to me is, and this is something that's even affected the way I pray and the way I think about my my spiritual beliefs and everything else, is, you know, I think as a Christian, I tend to think about praying for healing, praying for events to change. And I believe in the power of prayer. I believe that sometimes God does intercede and make changes in our lives. But I also think sometimes a more important prayer is not to pray for a particular outcome, but to pray for the blessing and the emotional growth that we get, the spiritual growth we get out of these lessons. Because I can think of multiple things that have happened in my past. I mean, another important thing from my past is we adopted our 2 kids through foster care. Okay. And that was back in when I left corporate world, we were kind of dealing with infertility issues and thinking about what do we want to do as far as building a family, looking at, different treatments related to science, like in vitro fertilization, things like that, versus considering adoption. And we decided to go not only the adoption route, but go through foster care. And that was a huge challenge. That became a blessing that I left my job in the corporate world, because that gave me more freedom to be able to spend with our kids. So I'm really honest about why I left the corporate world. Those probably really more leading than just stress of corporate environment. There were other things going on in my personal life that I wanted to be able to take care of it, that were important to me. But knowing that, when we're going through things like infertility, that was not the most fun thing in the world to deal with, of course. But, it was such a blessing now, because we would never had our 2 kids that we have now. Like, I would not, if I could go back and change that, of course I wouldn't change that. These are our 2 kids. We love them to death. And they're just, they are our family. And I couldn't imagine any other outcome, and whereas we wouldn't have gotten to experience this. So I look back at that, and I can actually legitimately say, for that particular issue, I'm blessed that we dealt with infertility because of what it gave us. And I can't say I'm necessarily blessed from cancer, but there are blessings that came from cancer,
Yeah. Well, and with the adoption, you certainly changed the trajectory of their lives.
And our lives too. Yeah.
And they did, I guess, as well. So kind of in that vein, what do you, when you think about living better, and what does it mean to live better? How do you connect to that and relate to that in your own journey?
I think I think everyone has different, one of the things that kind of annoys me, I hear people say sometimes, is if you can find something you love and do it every day, and make money at it, then you never have to work a day in your life. I take the complete opposite side of that. I don't believe that, because I think the things that I actually do love, I would want to do for a job, because I think I'd get sick of them really fast. But I do believe that, so I don't really look at it from that perspective. I guess I look at it more from just balance, and I've thought about this, something, I mentioned journaling, starting off with journaling this year. I wanted to quantify the different dynamics, the different facets of my life that I care about. And I kind of came up with an acronym. It's pretty lame, but I'm gonna share it anyways, because I'm sharing everything else. Might as well share this one too. But it's POSSIE, POSSIE, and it stands for 6 different words. The P is for physical, O is for occupational, S1 is for social, S2 is for spiritual, the I is for intellectual, and the E is for emotional. And so those are kind of the 6 dynamics. And you can look online. I did some Google searching, see when people think about a well-rounded life and work-life balance, what are those different facets of life that people care about? Some people break it into 8 or 10 different things. Some people break it into only like 4. I decided to go with 6 because I was able to find a lame acronym to kind of remember it by. But I did just trying to keep all those balanced. Taking care of yourself physically, taking care of your work, occupational side of it, taking care of your relationships with your family and your friends. That's the social part of it. The spiritual part is obviously your relationship with God or higher being, your purpose on life, whatever you want to think about that. I is the intellectual side, learning, stimulating your brain, challenging yourself, and E, emotional, connecting with yourself, taking some time to just really think about life and whether it's meditating, whatever the case may be, just using those tools in your life to become a better person. And then by breaking it out into those different buckets, I can ask myself every day, and I make this part of my journaling process, ask myself, how am I feeling each of these 6 buckets? Am I doing a good job on these, or am I not? And at the end of the week or at the end of the month, I can look back and I can see, okay, well, every day I managed to do a good job with work, but I really didn't do a good job, with my relationships. I didn't spend as much time with my family as I should have. And then, making a focus the next week or the next month to be more intentional about that. And I think it's been helpful for me.
Yeah. So on the work front, then how do you connect that? And you talk about work-life balance. What does it mean to work smarter, and how do you navigate the tension between the personal and the work?
So I think working smarter. I just got finished reading the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, but it's
I've heard of it. I've read another one called The Power of Habit, which I think is pretty similar.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in Atomic Habits, he talks a little bit about, some of these topics like working smarter. And he actually put it in a phrase that I really like, because I used to go to when I first started off as an entrepreneur, I was kind of still working in the corporate world, but I got into affiliate marketing. We went to some affiliate marketing conventions. They were great. I mean, enjoyed them, but I started to see like this culture of people who just go to all these conventions all the time, and they're reading all these books, but it's like, what action are you actually really taking?
Yeah.
And then in Atomic Habits, he brings this up. He talks about motion versus action. A lot of people are in motion. They're doing a lot of things, but they're not actually really taking action. I'm going to go to this conference. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to do this thing or that thing, but they're not really doing anything that has any tangible quality in terms of producing an outcome that will affect their business. And so I think, to me, when I think about working smarter, it's really about, a couple things. One is doing things that are more actionable versus just staying busy, not just coming in, clocking in, clocking out, feeling like I was busy all day because I sat at my desk all day and answered a bunch of emails, but actually doing something that moves my business forward. Another book I really loved was the book by Gary Keller, The One Thing, where he talks about focusing on the one thing each day. If you focus on that one thing each day, then you'll have a one thing collectively you want to do for that week, which translates into a one thing you want to do for the month, for the quarter, for the year, 3 years, 5 years, going out, like that domino effect, right? And so focusing on that one thing, it also ties in with Atomic Habits too, because Atomic Habits talks about, like, there's an example used, the British cycling team, where they try to make a 1% improvement across a variety of different places, and collectively all those 1% improvements turned them from being, not that great of a cycling team to winning for like so many years in a row or something like that. And like that concept of like trying to be more smart about the way you work. Systems obviously plays into that. Another quote from Atomic Habits, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know the quote offhand, the exact quote, but it's something about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I thought that was really powerful to me. It's like building up the systems and the processes. Journaling plays into that for me. I keep going back to journaling, but it's played a big part in that for me, because my biggest challenge from 2021 is I had all these things I wanted to do. I look back on it, I don't really feel like I accomplished what I wanted. And I know that the biggest reason for that was probably because there were most days where I came in, I said, this is what I want to do today, but I let another excuse get in my way of actually accomplishing what was needed. Now, how's that tie in with personal life? I mean, that's, just trying to get work balance so you're focused on the right things is tough enough. And then being able to step away from that at the end of the day, I think just being disciplined. Another thing I try to do is I try to do my one thing. I like to do that first, so if I don't get anything else done, at least got that one thing that I know I need to do to move my business forward. And then being able to step away and, turn off the phone and spend time with the family and all that is obviously important.
Yeah. A few things you said reminded me years ago when I was having trouble with that consistency dynamic. In a way, I knew what needed to be done. I knew how to make the success or the results that I was looking for. I just couldn't actually do those things. And I was at an event with Jim Collins speaking, and he made a comment. He said mediocrity is the sign of chronic inconsistency. And it was like, he's talking right to me. And so at the same time, I ran into this tool of, unfortunately, which is no longer around, but it was called I Run, You Run. And the guy who started it, the reason he started was he was having that motion like you're talking about, but he wasn't actually moving he had a law firm, his law firm forward. And so he sat down and he kind of just stopped doing everything. And he said, what are like the 5 things that I must do every day or every week in order to move this business forward? And how many times do I need to do those? And it was really clear to him what those were. And so he wrote them down. And then he said, now I'm going to track myself and I'm going to keep doing this each week, and I'm going to hold myself accountable. And that led to the tool being developed. And I used that tool for a while. And I realized after I started using it and I started getting that focus, okay, what are the 5 things I need to be doing to move my business forward? And I realized when I did that, I was able to get all those things done on a Monday and Tuesday. It took me 2 days to get all this done. And so what that revealed to me was there were one, I wasn't doing those things. So I was spending a whole week doing things that weren't those things. And then it also revealed when I got that focus, I now had 3 extra days to go do other things, build relationships or community building or networking or whatever. So that was interesting to just go through that exercise. It's, often, in retrospect, that busy work, that motion, we want to feel good about what we're doing. And it's less about actually accomplishing the goal that maybe we say we want, but for some reason we're not actually wanting it, or I'd have to kind of dissect that a little bit more, but does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think we even subconsciously, a lot of times we allow things like, I feel like if I'm checking my work email and I'm responding to customers, I'm doing a great service to my company. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But the reality is sometimes I use that as an excuse not to do what I should actually be doing. Right. So
Yeah,
can that customer wait? If it's a emergency, yeah, maybe it's an immediate response.
Yeah.
But if it's something that can wait a few hours so I can focus on what's more important, why not go ahead and do that and then just batch process my email? I mean, I know people who, and this is something I've toyed with, I haven't actually embraced, but I've been kind of thinking about in 2022, actually setting up my inbox so that, there's I think, is it Boomerang? I can't remember. There's a plugin for Gmail.
Well, I know in Gmail you can snooze. So.
Okay, maybe they didn't have the feature back when I was using it before. It used to be you had to get a plugin and actually snooze or have it delivered. Say deliver my email at noon and 6 p.m. every day or whatever. And I've even thought about doing that. It's like you can easily get distracted. That's one of my biggest problems. That's why I had to finally get intentional. And I'm still, even though I'm writing it down every day and I'm like focused on it, I'm like calling out like this is my one thing and I'm gonna do it and I've got to like check it off on my journal. There's like this accountability aspect to it. I'm still finding myself not doing it first. Find myself late in the day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not get this thing done. I gotta get it done right now, and I'm struggling to get it done. It's so frustrating. It like makes me so angry. But sometimes it takes a while to break bad habits. You got to put into practice new things and start to retrain your brain, and that's kind of what I'm struggling with now.
Yeah, well, and I think like you mentioned earlier, the systems piece of it. And for me, when I ended up shutting down my company in 2014 and started freelancing, and in the first few years, there was a natural tension in being a freelancer who had to provide for his family. So I was the sole income for our home. That bear was chasing me, so to speak. And when the bear's chasing you, that gives you motivation, right? That gave me motivation. But as I've been freelancing since then, so it's a little over 7 years now, as I've been more successful and I have more steadiness and I have financial buffers, that bear isn't there anymore. And he pokes his head out every once in a while to say hi, but it's not the same as him chasing me. And so I have to have these systems that kind of simulate the bear when the bear's not there. And the other part of it for me now is, I'm having a little bit of health issues with my neck. I've got some discs in my neck that are pushing on nerves in my right arm and causing pain and tingling and numbness. And so it's debilitating where like I don't have the stamina that I did before. I'm having to, and even the motivational piece is it's diminished because of this. I feel like I'm kind of stuck until I'm able to get this resolved. So it's another type of it's almost like a different tension, but these are circumstances, they're contextual environments that we're in that do shape us, and a lot of times more so than even when we have all the right things in place to handle them. Sometimes those contexts can diminish our motivation, our discipline, even when we've had those before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I like your analogy of the bear chasing you and having to artificially introduce that from time to time to keep the motivation up. Yeah, and I'm a strong proponent of everyone's kind of motivated by different factors. Some people work better with the fear of failure, and some people work better, just from a management perspective, looking at our employees. Some people work better with the rewards of success and being motivated and acknowledged, and they look for that praise versus the fear of something going bad. And there's all kinds of different varieties of it. But I think those are good. Something I can probably get better at. But I think sometimes it's just building the systems and being able to quantify things in a way where, like for me, I haven't done a budget since it's been way too long. I don't even know the last time I really put together a budget with our business, but like I did that just like the other day, and like going through that, I was like, man, I did not want to look at this. I did not want to see this. I want to just pretend everything was perfect. It's not like things are horrible, but I'm like, man, like I'm looking at how much we spent on like different marketing initiatives last year and some of the things we tried to do that we weren't successful with. And those are all things to learn from, but to be able to quantify it and be able to actually see, okay, well, here's where my resources are going, is a bear in of itself sometimes, I think.
There's a have you ever heard of Admiral Stockdale?
Yes.
The prisoner of war. he has that quote. He says, "You must never confuse faith that you prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." So when you said the not wanting to look at the budget stuff, it made me think of that, because we don't want to look at the good news, but it's actually our salvation is through confronting those brutal facts.
Yeah, he was the running mate for Ross Perot, right?
I don't remember that.
I think he was. I'm pretty sure he was. If it's the right guy, Admiral Sacco. I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay, yeah, he was the prisoner of war in Vietnam and one of the few that survived. And some of the folks that were with him, he kind of that quote came out of this idea of like, well, why did some survive and some didn't? And a lot of them had this sort of false hope. Maybe Christmas was coming, so that, oh, we're going to be rescued by Christmas, and then Christmas would come and go. What about Easter? And then Easter would come and go, and next Christmas is come and go, and so people had their hope in this this sort of mirage of rescue that may or may not happen. And by not confronting the brutal fact that they may never get rescued, they lost hope and they lost motivation.
Yeah, I've got to mention, a book that you may have read. I'm not sure, but Man's Search for Meaning by Victor.
Okay. I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it.
Yeah, that's a great one too, because it talks about his time he spent in the concentration camp and how he came out of that. That was a huge game changer for me, just because I read that before cancer, but just kind of turned that whole thing upside down of thinking, okay, well, whatever I'm dealing with, there's always going to be some positive that comes out of it. And this is how, and he talks a lot about what's the difference between the people who survived the concentration camps and those who didn't. And a lot of it was those sort of things, the mind and mental tricks. It's amazing to think what the human condition, what we can handle, the things we get put through. And I think a lot of times, good and bad, it's what we say, if you win the lottery, that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be more happy. You might be happy for a few weeks, a few months, with all that money. But pretty soon it's going to wear down, and that's going to be your new baseline. It's all about I think happiness and sadness is all based around your displacement from your baseline. So if you achieve a lot of success, you create a new baseline. If you deal with a lot of pain and suffering, that becomes your baseline. So it's bad when you're doing well, because then you're always kind of grounded, or maybe that's a good thing, you're kind of grounded. But when you're doing really bad, you can still you build a new baseline, you learn a way to endure and deal with it. So
so you've mentioned several of these books and people that have influenced you and made an impact, and I imagine there have been many more. So what do you think about this, the idea of mentoring and sort of extending a hand towards those that come before you, and accepting the help from those that are ahead of you?
I think it's huge. I think if you can ever be both the giver and the recipient of that, I think is huge. I've been fortunate to be able to do some of that in my life. Some volunteer work we did before we adopted kids, with a foster home, which is great, very rewarding for us. Wish we could have done more of it. But it was something that really taught us a lot about life and about people that maybe didn't get the same opportunities that I did. And then also being able to be the recipient of that, working with people who may be smarter than me that can help me. If you're at point A, you want to get to point B, you got to figure out how to get to point B. Well, you can guess and keep trying to aim for point B until you get there, or you can go have someone help shortcut that process and get you there, much quicker. And I think that's huge. For me, it's been huge. Certainly, not having the strong marketing background when I started my business, I've had to leverage a lot of that with mentors, and even, hiring coaches and stuff like that to help me with my business. And it's been, hugely rewarding, and helped me learn how to, what to focus on, what not to focus on. And sometimes even, they'll be able to help you with pre-baked systems that you can put in place, at least as a starting point. Main things, you don't want to get too entrenched with one thing, right? Because everyone has different advice for different things. And so, trying to balance all that out. But I think it's a great way to shortcut process when you're trying to grow something, you're trying to build, you're trying to grow yourself, whatever it might be, to leverage those resources.
Okay. And so when you think about when you started entrepreneurship, did you seek out some entrepreneurs or did that happen more organically or reactively, or were you intentional about that?
I'm really bad about this. I sit here and, preach a good message on this, but I'm very introverted and just, I'd like my space and my boundaries. And, we moved out of the city out to some land outside of Austin, just so I could get away from having neighbors right on top of me. Cause I'm that type of person. I've said this to other people before, but like, I'll go down and rent a ladder from Home Depot before I'll go borrow one from a neighbor. Cause I'd hate like inconveniencing people and stuff like that. So same thing with the mentorship. I think that was something that it wasn't natural for me. And maybe that's an important lesson to take from this is there's certain things that come really natural to you that you're good at. There's things I'm not good at. Like I'm not good at public speaking. I'm not like, I've done some, podcasting and things like that. I'm guest on your show, trying to keep it together here and not fall apart. But like it's not something that comes natural to me, right? So I have to be more intentional about it versus other things. I think with some of this, that's the same here of reaching out to resources. I've had to be more intentional about because it didn't come naturally. Some people are just like real good about, I got this problem, I know someone who can help me fix it. I'm gonna go chat with them for 30 minutes and I'm moving along, whereas me, I'm like, I don't want to go and convince them. I'm going to plow through this. And then 2 days later, I'm stuck in, that's one of my things I didn't get done because I'm churning on it and not actually making progress. So I'm trying to be more intentional about it. And I think lesson there is be more intentional about those things and just in general, accept the things you do well and more importantly, accept the things you don't do well and try to find ways to overcome them.
Yeah. So, you've talked a little bit about mentoring, working smarter, living better. In many ways, narratives shape us and how we see the world and how we act in it. So what are some real or fictional stories that have shaped you as a person?
So I mentioned Man's Search for Meaning. I believe I have the title of that correct. It's I think it's Viktor Frankl is the name of the author.
Yeah, I think so.
If I'm not mistaken. That one was huge just for dealing with adversity and trying to turn things into a positive. Other ones like I read the biography by Phil Knight, is it Shoe Dog Millionaire? I can't remember the name of it exactly, but it was his biography about how he founded Nike and some of the adversity he went through. And hearing him give messages, like I mentioned the cash flow issue earlier, that we dealt with early on, and hearing him put that in, because we were dealing with cash flow issues with earnings, an order of magnitude less than his. He was dealing with making like $1 million a month and he's having to borrow money from questionable places because he couldn't, because of the cash flow issues. People were on like net 30, net 45, net 60 terms, and he's shipping out all these products, not getting paid for 60 days. But hearing that, I think that was good. Like hearing him talk about, now I don't know how many billions of dollars he's worth, but just seeing that there's so many points of friction and so many points where he could have failed. And it's like somehow he just kept, he kept overcoming those, whether it was his own work or just kind of luckily falling into it or divine intervention, who knows? But look at that. And that certainly was something that had long lasting impact on me and the way I think about business.
Yeah. Now, I think you are into music. Is there anything about music that has to do with stories and narrative that appeals to you, or is it simply a different type of outlet for you?
I think it's more a different type of outlet. I mean, I listen to a wide variety of music. I mean, certainly there are songs that have a lot of impact on me. When I think about my 6 buckets I like to fill, emotional, I think one of the best ways for me sometimes to fill my emotional bucket is just to sit back and listen to some music, something that's maybe allows me a little bit more introspective and think more about my life and my place on this earth, and think about my family, think about my parents, and think about getting older, and all these different things. So I find a lot from that. I play music as well. I haven't been as active lately. It's one of those things, kind of New Year's 2022 resolution I have on my plate to try to do more of that. But I think I kind of got bored with it for a while, but getting back into that because I know that's a great emotional outlet. So I look at it more as just, it's exercising a part of my brain that I think the other things I do day to day don't exactly exercise. And that's what I really get most out of music. Sometimes it's just simply sitting out back, with the smoker going, with some music playing and just having fun. But sometimes it's more personal and, laying in bed with the headphones on, listening to music closely, get a lot out of that as well.
Yeah, so that's certainly a system to help you. And you mentioned the posse earlier. Are there any other systems that you think about, use, that you've created, that you've discovered?
I think making sure I'm keeping track of what I need to do. I mean, a lot of the systems I'm thinking about are more functional, like how do I make sure I get done what I need to each day. The journaling has been big, the posse acronym thing for juggling or handling that, but also I've started using here, it's been several years now, but I started using Trello pretty extensively. And I use that for all of I have a personal to-do list that I just keep track of in there, and I call them swim lanes, and I forget what they call them on, I think they're not boards, I think they're columns. I forget what the terminology is in Trello, but you set up different, I call them swim lanes. So different swim lanes for the different activities you have going on. So like I've got a today swim lane, which is just what I need to get done today. And then I've got a weekly swim lane. That's everything I want to get done this week. And then I've got a monthly swim lane. So I can track, what I need to get, what I want to focus on for the month, but then the things that are more important get moved over, more and more to the left as they become more important, become more dominant, and whatever I'm focused on that day or that week, and then moving more to the right as things that I need to remember. And it's also great just for, I was going through cancer, and now I deal with like follow-up checkups still, even though I'm mostly cancer free. I still get these things where I've got to deal with like insurance stuff and calling people. You get on the phone and they say, well, we got to resubmit this, and it's going to take 30 to 45 days. And I got to remember to call them back, because if I don't, then they're going to send it to collections. And so I use it a lot of times for that. Like I have a swim lane just for things I'm waiting on, and I'll keep documentation. I'll take pictures of my bills and post them there. So I've got my account number or the invoice number, whatever information they need on that, the date of service. I got all that right there, and I keep it all in one place. Like Trello has been huge for me in managing that. In fact, one of these days I'm going to put together like a blog post or something like that.
It sounds like you got a good system.
I don't know if it's the greatest system in the world, but it works really well for me. I've tried to-do lists and different to-do apps, and I could never really get exactly what I wanted out of those the way I've been able to with Trello. But I think everyone has their own process, their own things they're trying to solve. Other systems work better for other people. That's another thing I'm a big proponent of, is like, it's not a one size fits all with this sort of thing, right? It's what works for you.
Yeah. So when you think about your cancer, and do you feel like that season prepared you for the pandemic season that followed it?
Yeah, I think so. To some extent, I'm like, well, I've survived that. Certainly, and I mean, like the odds, like with the type of cancer I had, it was like, high 90% survival rate. So, and even within that, it depends on the type of testicular cancer you have. So some may be closer to 95, some may be closer to 100. Mine happen to be closer to 100, but it's kind of like the pandemic, right? Like the odds of survival of that was maybe, some people say like 1%. But then it breaks down into different risk groups being higher than others and stuff. Yeah, I think it did.
Did you set up systems during that season that ended up helping you in the pandemic and the craziness of 2020 and that it bled in 2021? Not really.
I mean, as far as like coping system, I think it's more, I don't think I was ever really that intentional about setting up systems to help me cope. I mean, there were definitely practices. Like I can remember when I was going through cancer, I was real intentional about making sure I didn't do certain things that might be unhealthy. Like, I occasionally have a glass of wine or, a beer or whatever else, and never go crazy with it. But, I see people that get really tempted. But like, I remember when I was going through chemotherapy, I was at MD Anderson in Houston doing inpatient treatment for 5 days for chemo, and talking to the nurses about it. And they got to develop friendships with them. And they would tell me about other patients who would literally have like bottles of like, Jack Daniels or whatever in their room, like drinking while they're going through chemo. I'm like, holy moly, that is
that's intense.
How
about on the business system side, or just the disruption that the pandemic created, losing clients, getting new clients, working remotely more often, things like that?
That's one of those things that I think maybe that's a good way to look at how we prepared and we were ready for the pandemic, because our employees have always been remote since 2013, but it forced us to try to build more systems to handle that remote work. So we were already prepared when I had cancer in 2018, certainly prepared now. And we built a lot of systems to make sure we have accountability Also just the way we hire, bringing in the right type of people and looking at some of the intangibles, not just, can this person, if we're hiring a developer, not just looking at their raw abilities of what their capabilities are in terms of coding ability, but also looking at, are they good people? Are they easy to communicate with? Are they people that are self-starters and can manage themselves, or do they need a lot of babysitting? Those things are really important to us, building a culture based around that. And so we were able to do that. And I think that's all systems we have in place with our hiring process and the way we hire in order to facilitate that. And it's paid dividends for us since we built that. I remember telling someone back when I had cancer, I was in a mastermind group and I was talking to them about it. And they were telling them, like, there's no better way to stress test your systems than to get cancer, because then, you're like offline. And of course, my wife's co-founder, but she had it just as bad, if not worse than me, because she's having to deal with me and then deal with all the different things, appointments and scheduling and insurance and all this other stuff. So it was like a full-time job for her too. And so we're both kind of pulled away, and so the systems, we had to rely on the systems and the people that are working in those systems. And unfortunately we made it through. So I think we did something right there.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I shifted from owning the business to freelancing, it was quite an intense emotional ordeal for me. And but that whole process prepared me for the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, I thought I was going to have to shift again, but I realized in retrospect, I've already made that shift. I just did it several years earlier. And so I ended up the pandemic ended up being more of an opportunity for me to actually take advantage of versus trying to survive. So
I think it's one of those things where maybe that's the silver lining in all this, is that it's allowed us to get like a better perspective on life. I think we live in a culture, I think that's one of the takeaways I see, is like we live in a culture where it's very focused around like social media and your social presence and the things you're doing and where you're checking in and what vacations you're going on, stuff like that. And it's, you see a lot of things in life, like you look at events prior to the pandemic and how much ticket prices were going up on events, and how much, restaurants and stuff, how crazy and wild that the whole restaurant scene has become, foodies and all this other stuff. Right. And so like getting to simplify and go back to like a simpler life of people thinking about, well, man, I might grow a vegetable garden in my backyard because I've got time and I can't depend on the grocery store to have lettuce every time I go down there, stuff like that. Like, I think there's
maybe remodeling my house instead of leaving and buying a new one, just make what I have better.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of lessons from that have changed, certainly impacted me, probably has impacted most people. And I know that, we deal with a situation now with the pandemic, especially places where, they're confined more. I feel bad for people who live like in New York City, live in, small rentals or whatever. And, they're trapped in when things go up on the curve and all that. And like, feeling bad for them. It's like, well, mental health is obviously a big thing these days.
Well, and I think it's twofold. There you have external enforcement like New York, where the city is forcing them to stay home. But I think there's also a lot of people that are self-enforcing, where they're not leaving, even though they have permission to do so, because of maybe it's the anxiety, or maybe it's the isolation, or whatever, introversion, as you mentioned. It could be a variety of factors. So,
but us introverts, we love like being able to wear a mask and just have an excuse to stay home. I'm joking about that, because I'm, where we live, not a lot of masking going on. I'm not real, I may wear it occasionally, certainly places that require it. I'm gonna wear it. I'm not one of those going and yelling at people or anything like that, but just trying to balance all that out, like figure out what is the right thing to do. But I think there's definitely a lot of lessons to be learned from that. Just building out your life and finding a way to be more comfortable with yourself. Some people just cannot handle being home, they constantly got to be going. And I'm the type where I gravitate towards like a simpler life, especially as I get older. And so, a lot of ways I would say when we went through the pandemic, it wasn't a big change to us, because we were used to only going out to eat maybe once a week, if even that. And then most of the time spent at home running kids to their social events and stuff like that. So maybe that slowed down a little bit, but with everything else the same, because we kind of live out here where there's not a lot to do anyways, and kind of like it that way. So what a big transition for us.
Well, it is interesting, just like you talked about a few times, in terms of the lessons learned, the blessings received. I remember one client told me that they were a financial consultant for companies, and they said the companies that were well prepared for the pandemic were prepared because of what happened in 2008. And so there is something about going through these storms that changes us, that prepares us, that molds us into better leaders, because there is another storm coming. And sometime it'll be bigger, or it could be smaller, but they're coming, and it's not a matter of if, but just when. And so if we can become better people to help to get through it ourselves, but also to help others through it, it's a huge opportunity for us to do that. So
yeah, I think you're exactly right.
So is there any other words of wisdom or things you wanted to share that we didn't get a chance to touch base on?
I think we touched most of the high points. I mean, I think, it's obviously, we're recording this obviously just after New Year's. So, certainly New Year's resolutions and change and how I can improve myself is front and center in my mind. We talked about the journaling and stuff like that I've been doing. I think that's been real big. But yeah, I think just, we deal with all this craziness and chaos, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes we just have to live and accept the reality of where we are and, adjust to it. And I think that's something that, some people are adapting to better than others. If you're sitting around just waiting for things to get better so you can resume normal life, well, you got to keep in mind this may be around for a while. We may be dealing with this for a while. So, resetting your expectations and just find a way to find meaning in life, because meaning in life doesn't have to be about going out and doing all these different things. You can find meaning in a lot of different ways. I think in a lot of ways it's been helpful for people to re-embrace their families. And, think about people who are professionals who travel constantly. They're on the road 5 days a week and never see their kids. Well, now they're having to relearn what life is like being at home, 7 days a week, month after month. And so there's probably some good in that, and just, continue to pray for everybody that, obviously businesses that are impacted by the pandemic and stuff like that. Seems like we're doing okay, but I don't know what's going to happen next. So just being prepared. But I think we hit most of the high points. So high points or low points, whatever you want to call
them. So what are you up to, and how can people connect to you?
Well, the best way to find me is just go to our website, caffeineinteractive.com. You can reach out to me there through our contact form. You can email me at dustin@caffeineinteractive.com.
And what's the type of work that you guys do, and who do you work with?
Work with a variety of different companies. We work with a lot of, we started working with a lot of charter schools doing marketing work for them, helping them out during the pandemic, because they've seen a lot of decreases in enrollment. So doing some of that, as well as helping people with websites and web and mobile app development solutions. So we kind of run the gamut on the whole digital side of things. And so if there's ever anyone has a need within any of those areas, we're happy to help and hop on a call and talk about your need, whether it's a new website, new app, or help with some marketing stuff. We kind of do the whole thing there with our team. So happy to help anyone that needs it.
Okay. So website, caffeineinteractive.com, you said?
Yep. All one word, no hyphens, nothing else, just caffeineinteractive.com.
And social media, are you active on there at all?
Not really. I think our business is. So, we have presence on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So, and I think those are all linked off our website too. So it's a good way to find us, but certainly go to Facebook, search for Caffeine Interactive. Just search for Caffeine Interactive. We should probably be at the top of that list. So you can find us there. We post on there from time to time too. So.
All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing your life with us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jason. I really enjoyed this.